What are sort of other general recommendations to people for wanting to build a prebiotic stack? And this relates to diet, which we should talk about as well.
I think, you've already spoke about the diversity of colours, diversity of plants. I think one thing that we really need to focus on as well is more fermented foods.
Yeah.
Right? So there's actually a study that was published which showed that fermented foods might actually be better than fibre for increasing diversity in the microbiome, right? So they took some healthy volunteers, people without stomach issues, and they randomised them to a diet that was high in either fibre or a diet that was high in fermented foods, right? So it's like 6 servings or more per day of fermented foods. I think it was like 25, 30 grams of fibre a day, right? And the group who ate more fermented foods saw an increase in gut microbiome diversity and a reduction in biomarkers of inflammation.
Wow.
But the fibre group didn't see any increase in diversity or a reduction in inflammatory markers. I mean, it was a relatively short study, right? But I think fermented foods, even though there's not a ton of evidence behind them, might be the next best thing for the gut because they seem to contain the prebiotics.
Yep.
I don't really like saying they contain probiotics because probiotics have to be strain specific. So I'm going to say they contain live bacteria that might be helpful. And they may contain these postbiotics, right, which is this new term. So if you imagine a sauerkraut, okay, you've got the cabbage.
Which is a fermented food.
Yeah. So sauerkraut is fermented cabbage. The cabbage is the prebiotics. The live bacteria, the lactic acid bacteria that ferment on it, they're not necessarily probiotics, but they're good for you. And then the postbiotics are when these bacteria are feeding on the cabbage during the fermentation process, they're producing metabolites that are important. And then also when you pasteurize the cabbage, right? So there's a lot of debate on whether you should be eating live fermented foods that are from the fridge or fermented foods off the shelf, right? So
what's the answer to that?
So I say both, right?
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so I'm going back to sauerkraut here.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a study with kimchi, but I think there's been one with sauerkraut as well. So kimchi is a fermented, it's like a Korean cabbage, right, with spices. They found that actually when they gave it to people with IBS, both the pasteurised and unpasteurised, so the living and the technically dead kimchi, both led to positive changes in the gut microbiome. So it might actually not be the live bacteria which are causing these changes, but even when they're killed, right, they become postbiotics. So those bacterial cells are dead. The metabolites might still be active, and they're probably having still some interaction with the immune system and the resident gut microbes. So
so it's entirely plausible that even if a dead bacteria is in something you consume, that dead bacteria still has an immunostimulatory effect.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly.
Because it recognises some elements as foreign.
Yeah, so your immune system may connect to something on that dead bacteria that's positive because it's used to it being a resident microbe, right? So I say both, right? So live, unpasteurised and pasteurised, but yeah, fermented foods. Try and get that. It's only one study in healthy volunteers. 6 servings a day sounds like a lot, but
6 a day?
6 servings a day, right? But it's actually achievable when you think you could have yogurt with a bit of kefir for your breakfast, okay? For lunch, you could have some fermented vegetables on your sandwich. So you could put some pickles on there, right?
Right.
You could have a drink of kombucha. So there's not a lot of evidence to show that kombucha has any benefits. But in that study, you can actually look at what each individual participant had for their fermented foods. And I think there was like one person who just had loads of kombucha.
And did they have benefits?
Well, collectively, there was benefits, right? Because other people had kombucha in that study as well, not just him. But I just thought that was quite funny.
That is really cool.
So, yeah.
Just a kombucha addict.
Yeah. It must have just been like the easiest thing for him to get, right?
Do you drink kombucha?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Even though there's not loads of evidence behind it, I just really enjoy the taste of it. And that's what matters most, right?
Yeah. We had one in the office for a while that tasted like a margarita.
Wow.
I'll send you. I don't mind saying it. It's a company in Glasgow called You and I.
Right.
And I've been to a kombucha masterclass by the two founders. I can attest to how passionate they are about kombucha, how passionate they are about the quality of ingredients, and everything that I've tried that they've made. I've no affiliation whatsoever to them, by the way. I just buy it and I drink it, particularly after the sauna. The lime salt one does taste a little bit like a margarita.
Like, nice.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's
non-alcoholic margarita.
Non-alcoholic alternative,
Yeah.
right? So we have a company based in Manchester that's local to us called Hip Hop, and like we've been doing stuff with theirs recently. We did some mocktails using kombucha, right?
Yeah.
And I really like them because they're local, right? I think you should support local. But
100%.
they also add a probiotic strain into their kombucha. I mean, there's no studies to show that it works in that kombucha, but I think that's quite cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Kombucha and pickled vegetables with your lunch. And then for dinner, you might have like an Asian-inspired dish, right? You might have some miso mackerel with soy sauce, or tempeh, which is fermented tofu, or just...
There you go.
Even you can have a shot of juice from the pickles, right? Because during that study, that's what they were also doing, just
drinking from the jar.
Drinking from the jar, yeah.
So some people might think that's socially not acceptable, but what we're saying to you is, it is. You can drink from the jar. It's cool.
Yeah.
So that was actually 7, I think, if I counted correctly. Maybe 6 or 7.
Well, pretty easy to do it.
There you go. So you managed to do it. But every day, I mean...
Every day, yeah.
The benefits are cumulative. They accumulate. And
well, I think, obviously you're having that regular introduction, which is what's important. As we know with probiotic studies and other studies, once you stop taking something, usually at least the microbiome just returns to baseline, right, pretty soon. So you want to have that regular introduction of things.